October 10th, 2021, active self-protection YouTube channel, 185,000 views. Dumb robber uses flare gun. If you're not aware of it, you should never engage anyone at hand-to-hand distances who's armed with anything, knife, anything that looks or acts like a firearm. Active self-protection and other channels are kind of obsessed with shot timers and competition grade stuff, and also using this in real ways that would have some effect on a person who is in the business of needing to use self-defense, mostly for defending others, like a security guard or a police officer. And in the case of ordinary citizens, this may or may not be valid. That is for you to decide. But channels that talk about disarming or dealing with somebody who's carrying anything even a sharpened stick and tell you that if you're working at a store and it gets robbed, when the policy is just give them the money and let them go, it's insurance will cover it, do not engage ever at hand-to-hand distances or any distance. Anyone who has a weapon that can be used at distance. If you're at hand-to-hand distance, you're at deadly range for anything. I don't know of anything you can do that with. Even a BB gun can kill you, technically. A flare is a deadly weapon if at a short range. It's a 100 grain projectile that's around 57 caliber. If it's in one of these types of cartridges, that's 57 caliber. And it's driven only by a shotgun primer. So the total foot-pounds is anywhere from 100 to 600 foot-pounds. It's designed to throw something 100 grains at that diameter up in the air 300 feet. Football field away, but straight up. And the impact from it can penetrate tissue this deep. And then it burns. It's on fire. And if somebody shoots you with, there is a variation of this that's a white flare, which is a signaling flare only. It's a illumination flare. It's even higher speed, and it's even hotter burning. But this is, I mean, if it gets under your skin, you're literally cooking someone alive. So it's considered immediately a deadly weapon. Police will shoot you if you point a flare gun at them. It doesn't matter if it's loaded or not. And if it's, God help you, if it's a blank. There's something called a bear gun. That's what I own. It's the green-bodied one. They're basically considered legally the same thing. They're flare guns. But the bear guns are specifically for warding off an attacker or scaring away a human if necessary, or getting rid of bears, as the name goes. It's for making a loud noise. It's also for firing a bird banger, or a cartridge that shoots a little firecracker up in the air. Any blank is deadly, period, especially at short range. The closer you are, the more deadly something can be. A mini shell version of it, which is what this one is, hard to see in the dark here. That one has the primer taken out, as evidenced by you being able to maybe see through. And the end, it's emptied. It'll usually have a cardboard disc in it. And if it's one of these that's a bear banger, it'll be yellow and it'll look the same. And it'll have a white plug in there that looks almost like wax. It's actually just a overshot wad, or actually a gas seal they stuck in it. The 57 caliber ones mark up with, I think, a 16 gauge or something like that that's repurposed for this. This is essentially a integral barrel cartridge, and there's the 2-inch limit for the chamber. And these are the flares that are used otherwise. They're red or orange. Again, primer's removed. And that's the overshot or gas seal on it. I lost the one for the other one here. If it's fired, that at minimum hits, and that will go into a person's skin several inches by itself. The projectile out of one of these is a larger diameter and less likely to penetrate, but it doesn't have to penetrate very far to catch on fire and burn. It's a horrible wound, and to the face, it's absolutely deadly. And with these, because the constriction's smaller, it actually comes out at a slightly higher PSI rating out of the muzzle. Now, the other thing about these is, again, the blanks. Being shot with a shotgun blank with it pressed against your tissue, if you get into a scuffle with someone, will cause a cavity to inflate 10 by 10 by 10 times the diameter of whatever propellant came out of it. If you're not aware of it, in these things they have anywhere from 20 grains all the way up to 80 or 100 grains, whether it's black powder or smokeless powder. The gas expansion is the same for both of them. It's just that gunpowder, true gunpowder, black powder, has a tendency of having a lot of waste material. It's a bunch of extra carbon. It's one of the ingredients, actually. And the point is that it inflates an area that's equivalent to a 3-dram equivalent expansion at a certain ratio. But we're just going to call it 10 by 10 by 10, or 1,000 to 1 expansion. That means it creates a cavity that large in your abdomen. That's if it hits the abdomen. If it's in the eye socket or ear, that's what happens. Now, they don't have very many videos that are visible for it, but the specific one of this bear banger, the yellow one, being pressed up against a watermelon is particularly expansive and interesting. It's mostly just a single frame. The video got taken down when it was put up because the gun didn't explode. It's plastic. I mean, that's what it looks like. It's just a green plastic gun. Looks black in the video here because they got the color rendering screwed up. And do the traditional, you can see me through the barrel, so there's nothing in there. On the inside of this is a lip, a very minor one, that makes it to where you can't put anything longer than 2 inches into it. No jokes. And there it is. And if you're not aware of it, that's the firing pin. It's attached to the hammer, and it doesn't go forward unless you pull the trigger. And one of the designs, when you pull the trigger, it actually locks the barrel in place, but they removed that in this one because they didn't want that as a feature, I guess. These cartridges, can you see down the barrel? Most likely you can't. So let's do a little bit of identification, or the lack thereof. If you can see something like that, it could be a flare, or it could be a blank. If you look down it and see cardboard, it's definitely a blank. And if you look down and see any colored ring, yellow it'll be a blank, and red or orange it'll be a flare. None of these are good outcomes. Now I'm going to point out one of the more unpleasant options. It's a piece of steel electrical conduit. Suddenly the weakness of the plastic barrel is irrelevant. Just a layer of tape and jamming it in, and it's now a subcal adapter. Or a reinforcement for a shotgun shell. And suddenly you have a 3-inch Magnum steel barrel, integral steel barrel shell that can fire full-on buckshot. There's even a version I've come up with that uses now literally metal screws and a washer and makes a full-on shotgun shell that replaces most of the gun. It still will break the gun, but it won't harm the person firing it, and they will be able to test it to make sure of that. You know, so a flare gunner, PUBG flare gunner, firing a weapon of any kind, do not wrestle, do not attack, do not approach or encroach. So, was a dumb robber using a flare gun? Obviously. It was probably empty. And do you want someone to point that at you to try to do some color rendering index in your eyes, trying to figure out whether or not it's a blank, a flare, or should you give a damn? I don't think it matters. I also want to point out something of note is that the opening here for a shotgun primer, some nitwit will figure out that they can stick a .22 Magnum in it, and in order for it to hit off-center fire, they just kick the barrel up slightly, and suddenly now you have a .22 Magnum pistol. It doesn't fire very accurately, but it doesn't have to be accurately. Everybody's a marksman at 3 feet. So, dumb robber uses a flare gun. Do you respond in any other way other than it being a firearm? No. Even if it's street legal and anybody can get one, and you can even get one if you're a felon, which is the reason sometimes this is done. There's one guy who loaded one up with Cheerios or something. Another person who loaded it with a blank and then stuck in a socket for a socket set. They found the socket set in the corpse. The gun had broken itself, but they don't even, I don't know if you know this, but they don't serialize these. I mean, they serialize them inside, but that's not the part that's left behind when it blows up. And again, it doesn't always blow up. So, and yes, there are adapters that are made for normal shotguns that can be put into one of these things and get modified all the time. It isn't that difficult. And it'll fire anything. And you can see videos on YouTube of people firing 410 shotgun shells, 45 Colt, some pretty heavy rounds out of these things several times and not breaking it. And definitively 22 long rifle and 22 Magnum all the time. I've even designed and actually seen someone else's design for a 4 or 5 shot 22 long rifle revolver cylinder. You stick into it and you just increment it on the front. It even has a click so it lines up correctly. Fires just fine. The point is, if someone points a flare gun at you, unless you are an absolute expert in the subject matter, it could be anything from a 22 long rifle or Magnum up to a flare or a bear gun or a 410 shell, 45 Colt. It's a gun. So if you see anybody talking about taking a gun away from somebody, if they have the hammer back, these things are very easily fired. There isn't any safety on them except for about 6 months ago, Orion finally came out with one with a safety. It's the first time they've ever done it. So yeah, somebody cocking the hammer back and pointing it at you, they will be able to shoot you. It's not that complicated. It's no different than any other gun. And I'm not sure what would be worse, the 22 long rifle, Magnum, or the flare or the bear banger. Depends on contact distance. So, dumb robber, yes. Treat them like a smart robber, yes. And if you have theft insurance at your business, which you should have, just give the robber the money and make sure you get a video and audio recording of them and be done with it. So, thanks for watching. Have a good day. Good luck with that. And this is not a tutorial on how to do any of these things. All of these will result in you hitting. If you fire at a short distance, you'll hit the target. If you're aiming at anything further away, you won't hit it accurately. Converting this into something that can shoot accurately, it's not recommended. It's doable, but you end up just building a gun. So just buy or build a gun. Bye.